This is KC Sports Network, proudly presented by Emprise Bank.
Welcome into another 3 Mall bonus edition. I am your host, Cole Manbeck, joined as always by former Kansas State wide receiver and partner at Wildcat NIL, Curry Sexton. And we are here to recap Kansas State's heartbreaking loss in Austin against Texas this last weekend as the Wildcats fell in overtime and a real heartbreaker, 33-30, where it felt like K-State might pull off the big upset against a top 10 team in the country and put itself in a position to get to the Big 12 championship. Before we dive in with Curry, we do want to tell all of you that we are getting close to what should be maybe the highest profile, most anticipated Sunflower Showdown on the gridiron. And goodness, I don't know when you have to go back to for this type of matchup. You got KU in the new playoff poll ranked 16th in the country. You got Kansas State ranked 25th in the country. And we want to tell you that the Kingdom Bar and Grill in Overland Park, Kansas, will be hosting a KU K-State watch party for that game. And I think the game's November 18th in Overland Park. So be on the lookout for the kickoff time. That hasn't been announced yet. The TV networks exercised the 6-day window. So we will find out either this upcoming Saturday night or first thing Sunday morning, the kickoff time for the KU game. But be sure to head on over, check out the Kingdom Bar and Grill. It's an outstanding place in Overland Park, and they'll be hosting a fun watch party for KU and K-State fans, and what should be a really great atmosphere with great drinks and food. So be sure to check that out, and we'll continue to push that over the next few days to remind all of you on the 3 Mod Pod. Curry, before we dive into talking heartbreak, I do want to talk little positives here with the Wildcat NIL and what's going on there and the latest, and women's basketball fashion show, I believe, that's coming up in December. So maybe you want to expand on that and anything else you want to talk about NIL that's going on with the latest activities. The floor is yours.
Well, I appreciate that. So yeah, like you mentioned, we're hosting along with a women's apparel company, Cherry Co. We're hosting a fashion show on December 15th at the museum at Prairie Fire in Overland Park. All proceeds will benefit women's basketball NIL. It should be a really fun evening. We're gonna have a cocktail social hour with heavy hors d'oeuvres to kick things off, and then there will be the fashion show will take place next, and that will, that will include the women's basketball team displaying a lot of the women's apparel that Cherry Co. creates and sells. Cherry Co. has been a really good partner for the women's basketball team and some of their NIL. And then after that, we'll have some meet and greet for everyone in attendance, an opportunity to engage with the women's basketball team. And then we'll have some more of a social component and potentially a brief auction as well. So it should be a really fun evening, a great opportunity for the Kansas City K-State community to support our women's basketball team, a team that should be, a top 20 team in the country this year, and help support them in their NIL. And so really looking forward to that on December 15th. More information is available on our website as well as on our social medias. And then, I can tease another event that we've got coming up. I can't share much more as far as detail, but we'll be having an exclusive event in Kansas City in early March, and that event will be to support the K-State football team. We'll have a special guest from K-State or two, and then we'll have a special guest potentially from the school down the road. And so that should be a really, really fun event, a really unique event to play off of the rivalry and especially, the budding or re-emerging football rivalry. So those two events going to be really great events for the Kansas City and surrounding area K-State communities. Really, really looking forward to those and hope that a good turnout. There will be a good turnout of K-State fans to support these student athletes.
As you said, might be Jeff Mitty's most talented team at Kansas State and women's basketball. Really good-looking squad that they've got with some of the transfers they brought in addition to Ioka Lee returning, Gabby Gregory, who had an outstanding year last year as well. So talented, exciting team. Get out there, support them, and get out and support them in the NIL up here in the Kansas City area in December. And for more information, you can go to catsnil.com, find out more there, but also be sure to go to catsnil.com. And if you haven't, subscribe to the membership tier program, whether it's $10, $25, $50, $99, whatever tier you want to categorize yourself in, whatever tier you're comfortable in, be sure to sign up there. You'll get extra benefits, and you'll also be supporting K-State student athletes. So catsnil.com for more information, and catsnil.com to sign up for the membership program. Really encourage all of you to do that and support K-State student athletes. So Curry, before we dive into really what transpired in the game, I guess looking at the Texas game from a high-level overview, because you and I texted briefly after the game and talked about, how it feels as a fan. Like, I had emotionally kind of checked out when it was 24-7, just thinking, you just didn't have it that day. Texas is extremely talented, just got outplayed, and it wasn't going to hurt as much. And then Kansas State comes back, and it's right there, and 6 yards separates you from beating a top 10 team on the road and being in the command to get to the Big 12 championship once again. I'm curious, you're a former player and now you're a fan. What is your mindset in terms of trying to get over a loss like that? Is it harder? Does it differentiate as a player versus a fan? Would you, when you get blown out or you lose a game in close fashion, heartbreaking fashion like that?
That's a great question. I would say, honestly, it's a little different. I think on the fan side, it's so easy to feel like your heart's been ripped out after a game like that. When you do kind of check out down 17-0 or 24-7, and then they claw all the way back and have multiple opportunities to win, I think that makes it even tougher to swallow. As a player, and I think the circumstances, they vary, but in a game like that where you did get down so big and did look to be completely out of it and just to be completely outclassed, to come back and to create opportunities to win, I think can serve as a level of encouragement for those players. They took one of the top 7 teams in the country to the wire after spotting them 2 different 17-point leads. And so I think there's a lot of positives that can be taken from that game. Yes, it's heartbreaking. Yes, I'm sure we all woke up on Sunday just depressed as all get out, but that was an incredible effort from a football team that looked down and out for most of the first half.
Would have been easy to roll over and quit when it got to 27-7, and just like the mindset that I had as a fan, we just don't have it today, and we'll rebound and bounce back over the last 3. But that team fought, and it started with that drive where Phillip Brooks goes down, makes a heck of a play, one-on-one in space, and fights his way into the end zone, gets it to 27-14. It was crazy, Curry, because it was a 3-minute stretch, a flurry, where K-State scored 20 points and had the game tied up. But, I don't want to bury the lead here. Let's start right at the most critical part that I think everybody has probably replayed in their minds numerous times. K-State gets the ball to the 6-yard line. When Ben Sinnott catches that ball to get him to the 6, are you thinking K-State's winning that game at that point?
Yeah, absolutely. And candidly, when we forced them basic, 3 and out, kick a field goal right off the bat, I thought we're winning this football game. And then, to pick up 18 yards on first down and to give yourself 4 tries from the 7-yard line, I thought there is no doubt in my mind that we're going to win this football game. So really, obviously, as disappointing of an ending as I can remember as a K-State football fan, just clawing all the way back, not disregarding, the miss or the botched extra point and the missed field goal in the fourth quarter, and focusing solely on the opportunity to win on the road in overtime. First and goal at the 7-yard line, I can't remember a tougher loss to swallow. But absolutely, when Ben Sinnott got down to the 7-yard line, I thought we're winning this football game.
One of the only few, Curry, I could think of you played on this team, and it was one heck of a game, was the game in Stillwater in 2011 between you guys and OSU. And granted, that was just to try and tie the game, but you guys are at the 5-yard line with one shot there to try and tie it. It was a heck of an ending. It was a heck of a football game down there in Stillwater. But there aren't many games that end in that fashion. And unfortunately, K-State's been on the losing end of a couple real heartbreakers this year. You got a 61-yard field goal, and then that against Texas, against 2 good teams, and what Missouri has turned out to be in Texas. So what did you make of the play calls down inside the 7-yard line? Those first 3 plays, Curry, I think we're probably in agreement. All of them could have been touchdowns. And maybe how would you assess what K-State called there and what you saw, and if K-State should have been able to score on one of those first 3 plays there?
Yeah, I mean, I think first and foremost, it's easy to second guess the play calling in that in that four call stretch because we didn't score. But yeah, as you said, there were three out of four of those plays had a great opportunity to score, and so you really can't question the play calling. Sure, I think despite the struggles with the running game, 40 yards rushing for the entirety of the game. I still would have liked to have seen if you're going to take 4 cracks at it, give DJ Giddens the ball. Let DJ or Trayshawn take a stab at it. But with all that being said, I mean, you and I talked about this on first down. There is a gaping hole on the right side of the offensive line there that if Will, and Will just was trying to push forward and get yards ahead, but if he sees that lane to the right, he could have moonwalked into the end zone and had himself a heck of a celebration. And then the second down play, I mean, gutsy call in that situation, but that's a touchdown if the defensive lineman doesn't get his hands on the ball. And then third down, I think Will threw it a little high and a little hot, but in my view, that's a play that a top flight Power 5 Division I receiver has to make. And so I think, you had 3 plays in a row there where you had more than good opportunities to score and win the football game. And then fourth down, obviously that was an unfortunate set of events. Not the play that, not how you want to see your last chance at winning a football game unfold. Very unfortunate, but we had good opportunities to score and win the game, and I don't think that can be discounted.
I want to dive in a little bit more on those second and third down plays, but before we do that, Curry, I want to remind our listeners about our friends at Home Field Apparel. Once again, homefieldapparel.com has you fully stocked with any K-State item you could want: vintage, retro gear, super soft, super comfortable. I've got 3 Home Field hoodies that are seriously the most comfortable hoodies that I've ever had. The Sailor Willie hoodie, you've probably seen me wear numerous times on the podcast over the last few weeks. I ordered that, it came in, and the reason I wear it is because it's seriously the softest, most comfortable hoodie that I've ever owned in my lifetime, and I'm not just saying that. So go check out homefieldapparel.com for all of the sweet retro vintage K-State gear. They got 40 items plus over there on their website at homefieldapparel.com, and you can score 15% off with the discount code 3MAW23 on your first time order. So go check them out. Again, 3MAW23, get 15% off, and we'll be back from break and continue talking about Kansas State's game against Texas and the outcome of what happened at the end of that game when we come back.
Thanks for listening to KC Sports Network. Make sure you download our new app. Find it on the App Store or Google Play. Just search KC Sports Network.
So, Curry, let's start with, because I think we all agree, like, if Will sees that lane and bounces to the right, he probably scores, or he gets down to the 1 or 2, which changes the play call, right? Because you have the ability then to run with 3 downs. But I'm with you. Like, if you know going into that you're going to go for it on fourth down, my criticism of coaches all the time is, like, if you knew you were going to go for it on fourth down, you should have ran the ball one of the plays before. And I know they ran it on first down. I definitely would have liked to have seen one more run. But that being said, a lot of those plays could have worked. So that second down play, it's a pop pass designed to DJ Giddens. I like the play design because you rarely see it ran to the running back there, right out of the backfield. You usually see it to the tight end, and it would have been open, but unfortunately couldn't hold the block quite long enough. I think everybody saw that Ben Sinnott was also wide open, Curry. So I wanted to ask you, as an offensive player, is that a one-read type play in your mind, or should Will Howard be able to see the whole field and just see his tight end completely wide open with only one Texas defender over there to defend too?
Yeah, in most every case, with a play call like that, under those circumstances, it's a one-read play call. I was honestly surprised, and it may have been just Ben running a route may have just been to try to pull attention from part of the defense. But yes, in most cases, I mean, if you think about it, the field is condensed. It's second down and basically 7, second down and 6, second down and goal to go, and your quarterback is running directly toward the line of scrimmage. His peripherals aren't great at that point, and so of course it's a one read deal. He's trying to emulate run. He's trying to show the defense, hey, I'm going to run this football up the middle and then dink that pass over the top. So yeah, I think it's easy to look at, the all 22 and say Ben Sinnott was wide open, but I would be shocked if Ben Sinnott was even even a read on that play. I think that play was absolutely DJ Giddens all the way.
And I wanted to ask you that because it looked like Ben Sinnott was looking for the football on the route. So then I was like, well, so could that have gone to him? Because he actually, if there wasn't an option for him there, he at least really sold it pretty well. And so, And the third down play, Keegan Johnson, you mentioned it. It looks like they ran kind of mesh crossing routes, right? Probably anticipating man there, but
that's a play call you run inside. That's a play call you run when you're in a goal-to-go situation because it works against either coverage. It works against man or zone, and so they stuck with the play call. And Keegan did a good job of finding the soft spot in the zone. Unfortunately, those two guys just couldn't connect. And, it was a short pass. I mean, Keegan got himself right on the white line, right on the white stripe of the goal line. And I think if Will either throws it as hot as he did right at Keegan's chest or takes a little bit off, I think that's a touchdown and that's a ball game.
Yeah, I agree. And I thought maybe Curry, it was just a little late. Like, I think Keegan popped open a little bit earlier where it could have been an easier catch and throw. Look, it's easy for me to criticize again. The play would have worked potentially. It's a tough play, but it's unfortunate they weren't able to come up with it there. And then obviously jumping to the fourth down play, what did you make of the decision to go for it and the play design?
I guess two different ideas there. I was actually in the moment. I wasn't as against going for it.
Okay.
Obviously, I think fair arguments can be made on either side. I mean, there's the perfectly legitimate argument that Texas's offense was really struggling. Malik Murphy had lost all of the juice he had going in the first half. Our defense was really playing well, and so I think the idea is, okay, you take the tie, you take your chances of putting your defense back on the field and winning the ball game with your defense. That assumes a lot of things. I mean, that assumes, for one, that we make the field goal. I mean, obviously, we'd already missed a shorty in that game, and then you're going to trot Chris Tennant back out there for, what would have been a 24, 25-yard field goal. And we know that in his career, those are the field goals he has issues with. And so I think in a vacuum, I think you'd rather lose going for it on fourth, going for the win, than miss a tie attempt at a short field goal. And that was it. To me, that's a distinct possibility. And then that assumes that your offense goes down and either kicks a field goal or scores a touchdown in the second overtime, and then your defense holds again, either holds to a field goal or holds to 0 points. And so I think it's a perfectly legitimate argument to say we should have put faith in our defense, but in that setting, I wasn't against the call. We had expended a ton of energy coming back in that game. I mean, you think about the first 5 or 6 drives, we have 1 or 2 first downs. We have next to 0 net yardage through most of the first half. We expended a ton of energy. I mean, guys looked tired at the end of that game. Will Howard looked like he was gassed at the end of that game. And so I think with all that in mind, I think I wasn't opposed to taking the chance at winning a football game, walking off that game and leaving Austin with a win on fourth down. Now, with all that being said, I wasn't thrilled with the fourth down call. From the jump, things looked scrambled, and we just never gave ourselves a chance. And so, again, I think I can see arguments on both sides. I didn't hate the call at first. I just hated the way that it was executed, or the way that it ended.
So what was the call, Curry, in your mind? Because I got to tell you, I was a little confused why Ben Sinnott was running a route to the 2.5 or 3 yard line there. And he looked like he might have been the primary read, or maybe it was Keegan Johnson in the corner, but Will was looking that way. And I don't like throwing 3 yards short of the end zone there. So
yeah, I don't know what the call was either. I mean, I thought, Keegan was blanketed.
Yeah.
Unless you force a throw, hope for pass interference or hope for a miracle. Keegan, to me, was blanketed from the jump. So I thought, man, is this another, instance of like what we saw at Missouri, where Ben Sinnott is the primary and he's 2.5 yards short of the line to gain. I really not sure what the play call was there. I mean, I think goal-to-go situations are really, really hard, especially against a defense like Texas's, where they're big and fast. I just with again, I think we go back to this idea that if you know you're taking 4 chances at it, I think you try to run the football downhill with one of your running backs, and that's no disrespect to Will Howard. He's shown us he's a capable runner of the football, but I take my chances with DJ Giddens back there. I think with the game on the line like that, you got to have. I mean, every coach has 4, 5, 6. Your best 2-point conversion / goal to go play calls. You got to have those in your playbook, and you got to think, okay, when we need them, these are touchdown plays. And I don't feel like we really went into the bag on any of those. And a lot of times you see teams run trickery down inside the 10-yard line because you have to find ways to create space inside that goal to go area. And so I think the set of play calls left me wanting a lot, despite the fact that, again, we had chances to score on first, second, and third down.
Yeah, I can tell you, Curry, maybe a play that I would have liked to have seen at some point in there is roll Will Howard out and have the tight end throw backside, or something, like roll him out. And how many times have you seen this be a successful play that teams run where they, like, let's say the tight end on one side, he acts like he's chop blocking, right? Or he goes down to his knees, gets up, they roll him out one way and they throw back across the field into the end zone. It feels like that's open all the time. I mean, you guys ran that against, I think, Arkansas in the Cotton Bowl.
Arkansas, yeah. I mean, that was a staple. That was a staple in the Coach Snyder or Dana Demmel playbook. And you're right. I mean, with as much as we run 12 personnel, and that 12 personnel having one tight end who's very much a focal point of the passing game, and another one, whether it's Will Swanson or Garrett Oakley, who just isn't, I think that would have caught the defense by surprise. And while I'm not a fan of necessarily, especially in goal-to-go situations, rolling the pocket and even further condensing the field, I think if you've taken 4 stabs at it, I don't think it hurts to roll the pocket to see if you can get a guy in the flat via rub play or something else, and then leap that tight end to the backside and see what happens. I mean, there's a lot of creativity that can be had, or that can be done inside the red zone. And I kind of wish we would have explored that.
I say it because, like you said, it was a staple in the Bill Snyder offense, and especially, he did it in the 2.0 era too, but in the 1.0, I mean, I remember I was at an 0-2 Texas game in Manhattan, and they did it to Thomas Hill, where they rolled L. Roberson out, they threw it back across, and Thomas Hill runs it in from 20 out. Heck, they technically did it against TCU in garbage time. Will Swanson had the touchdown where they kind of rolled Will out and then threw back when the game was over, and they get the touchdown there too. That's just me throwing out an idea there that I was curious for your thoughts on. Any thought on? Look, Will Howard had played so terrific down the stretch, so I can totally see why they wouldn't have done it. But any thought to putting Avery Johnson in down there inside this? He would have been cold, right? He hadn't played since the first half. But I got to tell you, in my mind, Curry, I think, like, if Texas sees Avery Johnson take the field, they're selling out for the run, thinking, oh, they're at the 6-yard line, they're going to run this kid, and I'm thinking a pop pass there is going to be wide open too. But again, who knows?
Yeah, I mean, I think, I've seen the argument made that, hey, if we're going to run the ball on 1st and goal from the 7 with a quarterback, why not put in Avery? And I think your point about bringing him in and selling run and throwing a pop pass or something else, I think is a good idea. But I think that, Avery would have been cold. Will Howard, for the most part, put the team on his back in the latter part of that ball game. And so I do think it would have been a discredit to Will in what he did in the latter part of the game to take him out in that instance. And so I never crossed my mind during the moment that, hey, we should really look at Avery here. I thought that the way Will was playing in the second half, I thought Will's going to win this football game. And so again, I think, as I said in the sort of the outset, I think it's easy to critique the outcome, but if you go back and look at the first 3 of those 4 individual plays, it's hard to critique them individually because you had really good opportunities to score and win that football game. And so, I can tell you all, till I'm blue in the face, that I would have liked to see certain things, but in the end, we had good opportunities.
Look, Curry, the reason we've spent so much time, the majority of this podcast talking about those 4 plays is because in my mind, while I was so incredibly frustrated at various points in that game with things that I could have complained about night and day until I'm blue in the face, the bottom line is they had 4 chances from 6.5 yards out with a chance to win the game in overtime. So I kind of in my mind have thrown all that other stuff out of the way because they made it back to that point. And you got to be able to get 6 or 7 yards there to win the game with 4 plays. And so, like, a lot of my complaints, I know, like, okay, you could argue they might not have been in that situation if they would have played better earlier. Maybe there's more game pressure on Malik Murphy in Texas earlier in the game if K-State's more successful offensively. But I wanted to really harp on those 4 plays because that was such a pivotal moment, obviously, in the game. And I think what's on everyone's mind. But let's hit on a couple more topics here and then we'll wrap. I mean, you talked about it, Will Howard. I mean, that's felt like the best game that he's played, and really it all happened in the second half. It felt like really maybe the last drive and a half of the first half, and then into the second half. I mean, I thought he was dynamite throwing the football, and it looked like the Will Howard of last year. And I mean, look, Will finishes with 327 yards passing. It could have been like 370, but Keegan Johnson, drops that pass that who knows where the game goes then. If, he catches that, you're talking about potentially 17-14 early on in the second quarter if that ball's caught in case State goes down and scores. What did you make of Will's performance on Saturday and what you saw?
Yeah, I mean, Will was great. I mean, that was one of his best performances in a K-State uniform. I mean, he did in the second half of that football game look like the best player on the field. And really rallied the troops and really got a lot of different receivers involved in ways that maybe we're not accustomed to. And so was just incredibly impressed with Will. I think it took us, in my view, way too long to figure out what was and what wasn't working. It felt like we committed to the run game for much longer than we should. And instead of trying to see what Will and the receivers could do through the air. And by the time we got there, we found out, okay, this is how we're going to move the football on this Texas team. And so just really, really impressed with Will. He really didn't make any poor decisions. Sure, he threw an interception, but I think everyone can agree that that's not an interception that falls on Will's shoulders. So to throw for over 300 yards against a really good Texas defense, 4 touchdowns, should have been 0 interceptions. Just a really outstanding performance by Will in a tough situation with our backs against the wall. So hats off to him. I mean, the way that he has bounced back from basically getting benched against Texas Tech to having, 3 really, really strong games in a row has been incredibly impressive. I think a lot of kids under similar circumstances would have packed their bags and called it a day. And so I think, Will deserves a ton of credit. He's over the last 3 games become the guy that we all hoped he would be going into the season.
I have to ask you, Curry, I want to ask you about the wide receivers too and what we saw Saturday, but real quick, I do have to ask you, because you were part of, obviously, the Daniel Sams, Jake Waters QB season. You've talked about it numerous times before, how difficult that was in the locker room and just, getting into a rhythm and game flow week in and week out. Ben Sinnott comes out after the game and defends Will Howard adamantly, and look, they're best friends, they're teammates. Like, you can argue that's Ben Sinnott being a great teammate, sticking up for his guy. But what did you make of that? Because I got to tell you, my concern is you got one of your better players out there basically publicly advocating for one quarterback, and it kind of puts your freshman quarterback in Avery Johnson in an uncomfortable spot to me. But I don't know, because you got him publicly siding with one quarterback over the other. I don't know, what do you make of that if you're in the locker room, when you hear something like that, or, just even as you being external now, not in that locker room, what you make of it?
Yeah, I mean, I see it both ways. I mean, I love the fact that he's standing up for his guy and that he's kind of, I don't know that shaming is the right word, but he's, making it clear that in his view, some of the negative feedback or the negative buzz that surrounds Will Howard is inappropriate, unfair, all of the above. Will's been a really good quarterback for K-State for several years now. And so I like the sentiment. Let me say that. I like the sentiment from Ben Sinnott. And yes, I think that at the same time, I think I've had my own on Twitter and other things, my own share of getting into spats with some of the more outspoken fans, and I think over time I've learned, and it certainly hadn't learned this at Ben's age, but I think over time I learned that it's not often fair or wise to take a shot at the fan base. Because, these are people who spend a ton of time and a ton of money, a ton of energy pouring that all into their support of the Kansas State football program. And so I think it's totally fair for people to be able to voice their concerns, voice their opinions, voice their frustrations. And I don't know that calling out any faction of the fan base really accomplishes anything, because I think if nothing else, it emboldens those people who are being called out. As to the way that it may or may not affect the locker room, again, I think it cuts both ways. I think the message wasn't necessarily, I'm throwing my hat in the ring here. I think this is definitely our guy. Avery can wait till next year. I think it was more of, Will Howard is a warrior. Will Howard is a really good football player. We need to get behind this guy, as opposed to taking sides with Will or Avery. But at the same time, I think that people who maybe are proponents of Avery probably looked at it that way. It'd be hard not to. And having gone through that, it's just such a touchy subject. It's hard to keep a locker room unified when you have a split at the most important position on the team, and it's hard to carefully walk the boundary of sending the message of, we support either guy, no matter who's in the game. We're going to put forth our best effort, and we think we can win. It's not easy. It's not easy at all.
Oh, no, I completely agree with that. And look, I echo everything you said, Curry. I do want to, and I know you agree with this. Like, there are some fans that completely cross the line, with social media. So don't be that fan. Do not be in there sending DMs to guys. Like, we know that does happen. I mean, I've gotten DMs about my 6-year-old from opposing fan bases on something I've tweeted out before, like just mocking and berating him. Like, there are some awful people out there. Do not be that guy. Do not be going after these K-State players, in any way like that. I think it's certainly fair to question and to be critical of what's going on, but don't take it too far. And I think a lot of you that we're talking to that listen to this pod already know that, and probably aren't the ones engaging in that. But yeah, it's a touchy subject for sure. Hey, I got to ask you, because we talked about the wide receiver position for much of this year on this pod being a bit of a concern, and it felt like that was maybe they found something. Now, we thought they found something already with Jace Brown, maybe in that TCU game, Curry, but he has another big game, makes some huge plays. Keegan Johnson doubles his receiving yard in the game. Like, I know we talked about, he had a critical drop that led to an interception and potentially should have caught that third down ball in the red zone in overtime. But he did show some flashes. It was his best game by far. And then Phillip Brooks has been outstanding since that Oklahoma State game, when we were a little bit critical of, a couple things in that game. He's really stepped up. So I didn't see a lot of, I don't even know if Jaden Jackson was on the field in this game much. It felt like they kind of went with Jace Brown, Keegan Johnson, and Phillip Brooks for the most part of this game. Do you think maybe they found something here where they've got some explosiveness now at receiver?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, I was super impressed. Continue to be more and more impressed with Jace Brown and what he brings to the table. Again, I think his speed is something that just changes things for our offense. I mean, the separation that he got on that touchdown is just not something that we've seen a lot of this year. And then Phillip Brooks, I mean, his touchdown up the sideline there was one of the more impressive individual efforts that I've seen in a really long time. And he continues to step up at that position and be a guy that we can really count on. And then I was incredibly surprised to see Keegan's output after not playing last week against Houston and having very little output over the last several weeks. I wasn't sure that we'd see him suited up. I didn't know if he would make the trip. I certainly didn't expect him to be very actively involved in the offense. And so very surprised and pleasantly surprised with his output. I mean, 7 catches, 70 yards. That's the Keegan Johnson that we all hoped for coming into the year. And sure, the one big drop with that led to the interception, but I think everybody has to be encouraged by what we saw from Keegan last Saturday. And I think we've worried all year long about maybe how top heavy we've been from game to game. One game it's just Ben Sennett who gets all the love. The next game it's Phil Brooks. Next game it's Keegan Jackson or Jaden Jackson. But to have 4 guys between 69 and 77 yards of receiving, those 4 guys having between 4 and 7 catches, those 4 guys collectively having 4 touchdowns. I mean, that is an incredibly strong output by a group of receivers that I think is something we can build off down the stretch of this football season. If we get similar outputs each week from those 4 guys and some of their teammates, you have to feel really, really good about the things this offense can do with 3 winnable games left on the schedule.
Definitely. Were you surprised that K-State rushes for 33 yards, 1.1 yards per carry, and that's actually the fewest since the Alamo Bowl in 2014, Curry, for a K-State team, a span of 110 games. We knew Texas, we talked about it, they had the best run defense in the Big 12 in both yards per carry allowed and rushing yards per game, but was this just them having dudes up front, Tavondre Sweat and Byron Murphy and those guys being a load, or you still would expect this K-State offense, because they're a top 15 rushing attack in America, to be able to run the ball a little more successfully? Did you see anything that they were doing that limited K-State's running game, or was it just them whipping K-State up front with some talent?
Yeah, I think we just had, we had some spots where we had fits with their guys up front, and we just struggled to get on and stay on blocks and create positive yardage situations, and so I was surprised by that. I mean, I think despite the strength of Texas in their front 7, I think there's no reason why K-State should ever rush for 33 yards in a game with the offensive line that we have and with the pair of running backs that we have. I think Texas was loading the box and was daring us to beat them in the air. And like I said, unfortunately, I think it took us too long to realize that, and too long to realize that, hey, I think we can attack these guys through the air. But again, that's hindsight being 2020. But I mean, if you look at the first 5 or 6 series, I mean, it's 5 plays, 8 yards punt. It's 6 plays, 10 yards punt. 3 plays, -2 yards punt. 3 plays, 8 yards punt. 3 plays, -2 yards punt. 3 plays, -1 yard punt. And a lot of that was it's hand the ball off first down, hand the ball off second down, 3rd and long situation, and that's a situation that no offense wants to be. It's a good Texas defense. And so I think once we blocked that punt and a little bit of the momentum shifted, then we started adjusting our game plan. But I think I guess it wasn't too late, because we did come back and take into overtime. But in my mind, we win that football game if we adjust quick.
Yeah. And I got the cumulative numbers, Curry. Actually, it was the first 6 drives, 23 plays, 21 yards of offense. So under 1 yard per play. First 11 drives, 7 points, and 139 plays, I think 111 yards of offense, 2.8 yards per play on those first 11 drives. Curry, 11 drives is usually a game's worth for K-State, and they had 7 points. They were just fortunate the defense kept getting them the ball back. Look, one more question, because this, we've gone a long time already, and I know you're on a work trip in Nebraska, actually. So to wrap this thing up, I feel really bad because we hadn't even talked about the K-State defense, which, holds Texas to 33 points on 16 drives, which is really well done. And really, it's 26 points, because a fumble inside the 5-yard line set Texas up for an easy touchdown when the K-State offense fumbled it there. So the defense over the last 12 drives of that game gave up, you could argue they didn't give up a touchdown, really. I mean, look, they gave up a 5-yard run after that fumble, but otherwise they held Texas to 9 points on 12 drives after those first 4 drives when Texas was on fire. Just that performance by the defense, what did you make of it?
Again, I think my takeaway is that Joe Klannerman continues to be an incredible in-game adjustment guy. I mean, I thought that, based on the way that a lot of that first half transpired, where our offense could not stay on the field and our defense could not get off the field, I thought there is no way our defense is going to hold up over the course of this football game, because they are going to be dog tired. And obviously we gave up some big plays in the first half, and they really moved the ball on us. But I thought we made adjustments, and then we really settled in and started to give Malik Murphy and that offense fits. I think we we put all of our eggs in the basket of stopping Jonathan Brooks and daring Malik Murphy to beat us, and we put our secondary guys on an island. And I, they two of the best receivers in the country, probably one of the best 2 or 3 receiver duos in the country, with a great third option and a really, really good tight end. That's an unenviable task. And I thought at first we had some struggles there, but I thought those guys really ended up stepping up and making some really key plays. And so just very impressed with that defense. They have given us a chance to win every single football game this year. We have not lost any games because of our defense. And I think that's something that they can really hang their hats on, is they've kept us in every single football game.
Absolutely. I mean, when you look at the points per drive and look at the efficiency numbers of this K-State defense, they've had them right there. I mean, you look at the Oklahoma State game, you lose 29-21. I mean, essentially 10 points were because of the offense, a pick six, and then another turnover on downs that set Oklahoma State up inside the K-State 25 for an easy field goal in that game. They've withstood some hard swings in games with some turnovers by this K-State offense and still kept K-State right in the game, as you said, at every opportunity. So they've been outstanding for this K-State football team. Really encouraged with what we continue to see from that defense. And I think an important thing for fans to keep in mind, Curry, is almost all of these guys have eligibility remaining. Almost all of them could come back next year if they so choose, if they're inclined to do so. There is some youth, too, that's out there playing, and Jake Clifton and Austin Romaine and some of these guys. There's a lot of reasons to be excited for the future of this K-State defense. So, Curry, hey, really appreciate it, man, for you jumping on, as always, with us. Folks, remember to go to catsnil.com. Support K-State student athletes, sign up for the membership tier program, or at least check it out. Give it a chance if you haven't done so already. And then, of course, the women's basketball fashion show that's coming up and the K-State football event that Curry mentioned earlier. And then be sure to go to Kingdom Bar and Grill in Overland Park for the K-State KU Watch Party. We're about 12 days away from one of the most anticipated Sunflower Showdowns in a long, long time. So check that out. We'll get the game time here in the next several days, and can't wait to see you all in Manhattan for the Baylor game as the Cats look to bounce back as 20-point favorites against the Bears and get back on the winning track, because there's still a lot to be accomplished this year. At a 9-3 season, and potentially a win over a top 15 KU team is nothing to look down upon. So, Curry, appreciate it. Thank you so much, as always, and thank you to all of you for listening to another edition of 3 Mall Bonus.